The shrill ring of my phone pierced the quiet of our bedroom. I fumbled for it, my heart racing as I saw the clinic's number flash across the screen. This was it, the moment we'd been waiting for. "Hello?" I answered, my voice trembling. "Mrs. Nora Thompson? This is Dr. Patel's office." I gripped the phone tighter, willing the nurse to continue. "Yes, this is she. I'm sorry, but your pregnancy test came back negative." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Another failure, another month of disappointment. I mumbled a thank you and hung up, tears already streaming down my face. "Jackson?" I called out, desperate for my husband's comfort, but the house remained silent. Where was he? I dragged myself out of bed, padding down the hallway to his home office. The door was ajar, and I could hear his muffled voice. He was on the phone, speaking in hushed tones. "I can't wait to see you either, babe," he said, his voice warm and affectionate in a way I hadn't heard in months. "I'll make an excuse and be there in an hour." My blood ran cold. I pushed the door open, revealing Jackson lounging in his chair, a guilty expression spreading across his face as he saw me. "Who were you talking to?" I demanded, my voice barely above a whisper. Jackson fumbled with his phone, trying to hide the screen. "No one, honey, just a work call." "Don't lie to me," I spat, anger rising to replace the numbness. "I heard you. Who's babe?" His shoulders sagged, and he had the decency to look ashamed. "Nora, I'm sorry, I didn't want you to find out like this." "Find out what?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "I've been seeing someone else," he admitted, unable to meet my eyes. "Her name's Melissa. She's pregnant." The words hit me like a physical blow. I staggered back, gripping the doorframe for support. "Pregnant? But we've been trying for years. How?" Jackson stood, reaching out to me, but I flinched away from his touch. "I'm so sorry, Nora. I should have told you sooner. The truth is, I'm not infertile. It's you. It's always been you." I felt like I was drowning, gasping for air that wouldn't come. "What are you saying?" "I've known for a while that I could have children," he said, his voice cold and detached. I couldn't have them with you." The room spun around me as the full weight of his betrayal sank in. Years of treatments, of hope and heartbreak, all for nothing. And now this final, cruel twist of the knife. "Get out," I whispered, my voice shaking with rage. "Nora, please, let's talk about this," Jackson pleaded, but I was beyond reason. "Get out!" I screamed, grabbing the nearest object, a framed photo of our wedding day, and hurling it at him. It shattered against the wall, a fitting metaphor for our marriage. Jackson ducked, hands raised in surrender. Okay, I'm going. But we need to discuss this eventually. I want a divorce, Nora, a clean break." I watched in stunned silence as he grabbed his keys and wallet, heading for the door. Just before he left, he turned back to me, his expression a mix of guilt and relief. "I really am sorry," he said softly. "I hope someday you can forgive me." The door closed behind him with a final click, leaving me alone in the wreckage of my life. I sank to the floor, surrounded by the shards of our broken dreams, and let out a primal scream of anguish. How had it come to this? 10 years of marriage, of building a life together, all destroyed in a matter of minutes. As the tears flowed freely, I realized with startling clarity that this was only the beginning. Jackson wanted a divorce, and knowing him, it would be anything but clean. I pulled myself to my feet, wiping away my tears with trembling hands. If he wanted a fight, I'd give him one. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The library's familiar scent of old books and lemon-scented cleaner greeted me as I pushed through the heavy wooden doors. It had been 6 months since Jackson walked out, leaving me to pick up the pieces of our shattered life. The divorce was final now, a bitter process that had drained me emotionally and financially. But here, surrounded by stories of adventure and romance, I could almost forget the pain. Nora, Margaret, the head librarian, waved me over to the circulation desk. Her kind face creased with concern. "How are you holding up, dear?" I managed a weak smile. "One day at a time, Margaret. Thanks for asking." She patted my hand. "Listen, I've been meaning to talk to you about something. Do you have a moment?" My stomach clenched. Was she going to cut my hours? I couldn't afford to lose this job, not now. "Of course," I said, trying to keep the worry from my voice. Margaret led me to her tiny office, gesturing for me to take a seat. "Nora, you've been such a wonderful addition to our team these past few months. Your work ethic, your rapport with the patrons, it's been a joy to watch you blossom here." I relaxed slightly. hope flickering in my chest. "Thank you, Margaret. That means a lot." She leaned forward, her eyes twinkling. "Well, I have some news. Mrs. Jameson is retiring next month, and we'll need someone to take over her full-time position. I'd like to offer it to you." For a moment, I couldn't speak. A full-time job with benefits? It was more than I'd dared to hope for. "Oh, Margaret," I breathed. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," she urged, grinning. "We need you here, Nora, and I think you need us too." Tears pricked at my eyes as I nodded. Yes, I'd love to accept." As I left Margaret's office, my phone buzzed. A text from Jackson. My good mood evaporated instantly. "Need to talk. Meet me at Joe's Diner at 7. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. What could he possibly want now? We'd said everything there was to say during the divorce, but curiosity got the better of me. "Fine," I texted back. "But make it quick." The rest of my shift passed in a blur of shelving books and helping patrons, my mind racing with possibilities. By the time I pushed open the diner's door, my nerves were frayed. Jackson was already there, nursing a cup of coffee. He looked different. Haggard, almost. The smug confidence that had always irritated me was gone, replaced by something I couldn't quite place. "Nora," he said, standing as I approached. "Thanks for coming." I slid into the booth across from him, keeping my expression neutral. "What do you want, Jackson?" He took a deep breath, his fingers drumming nervously on the table. I need your help." I barked out a laugh. "You've got to be kidding me. After everything you've put me through, you have the audacity to ask for my help." "Please, just hear me out," he pleaded. "It's Melissa. She's gone." That stopped me cold. "What do you mean, gone?" Jackson's face crumpled. "She left, took all her things and disappeared. She's not answering her phone. Her family hasn't heard from her. I'm worried, Nora. She's 7 months pregnant with my child." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Part of me wanted to laugh in his face, to tell him this was karma for what he'd done to me. But the fear in his eyes was real. "Why come to me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Because you're the most resourceful person I know," he said. "And because I trust you. Despite everything, I know you're a good person, Nora. Will you help me find her?" I stared at him, my mind reeling. This was my chance for revenge, to watch him suffer as I had. But could I live with myself if something happened to Melissa or the baby? "I'll think about it," I said finally, standing up. "That's all I can promise for now." As I walked out of the diner, my phone buzzed again, a number I didn't recognize. I answered, my heart pounding. "Hello?" A woman's voice, trembling and scared. "Is this Nora? It's Melissa. I need your help." I stared at my phone in disbelief, Melissa's desperate voice still ringing in my ears. My mind raced, torn between helping the woman who'd stolen my husband and hanging up out of spite. "Melissa," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "What's going on? Are you okay?" Her sobs crackled through the line. "No, I'm not. I think Jackson might hurt me, or the baby. I don't know what to do." My blood ran cold. Jackson, capable of hurting a pregnant woman? It seemed impossible, and yet— "Where are you?" I asked, already heading to my car. "A motel just outside of town. The Pinewood, room 12. "Please, Nora, I know I have no right to ask, but—" "I'm on my way," I interrupted, surprising myself. "Stay put and lock the door. I'll be there in 20 minutes. As I drove, my thoughts whirled. What had Jackson done to terrify Melissa so much? And why come to me, of all people? The Pinewood Motel was a seedy affair, paint peeling and neon sign flickering weakly in the twilight. I knocked on room 12, heart pounding. Melissa opened the door, her face tear-stained and swollen. Her pregnant belly seemed impossibly large, a stark reminder of everything I'd lost. "Thank you for coming," she whispered, ushering me inside. I perched awkwardly on the edge of the bed, watching as Melissa paced the small room. "Tell me what happened," I said gently. She took a shuddering breath. "Jackson? He's not who I thought he was. At first he was so kind, so attentive, but lately he's become controlling, paranoid. He accuses me of cheating, says the baby isn't his. Last night She trailed off, her hand unconsciously moving to her arm. I noticed the bruises then, peeking out from under her sleeve. Anger flared in my chest. "Did he hurt you?" Melissa nodded, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "I'm scared, Nora. I don't know what he'll do next." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. Jackson's name flashed on the screen. I showed it to Melissa, whose eyes widened in fear. "Don't answer," she pleaded. I hesitated, then declined the call. "We need to get you somewhere safe," I said, standing up. "Pack your things. You can stay with me tonight, and tomorrow we'll figure out a more permanent solution." As Melissa gathered her belongings, my phone rang again. This time, it was a number I didn't recognize. "Hello?" I answered cautiously. "Nora, it's Marianne. I need your help." My heart stopped. "Marianne? My best friend, Marianne." "Who is this?" I demanded, my voice shaking. "This isn't funny." "Nora, please," the voice insisted. "I know this sounds crazy, but it's me. There's been an accident. Tom and we didn't make it. But Ethan, our son, he's alive. He needs you." The room spun around me. This couldn't be happening. Marianne and Tom had left for a weekend getaway just yesterday, leaving their 5-year-old son with a babysitter. "I don't understand," I whispered, sinking back onto the bed. "There's no time to explain." Marianne's voice urged. "Please, Nora, go to our house. Take care of Ethan. You're the only one I trust." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my mind reeling. "Nora?" Melissa's concerned voice broke through my shock. "What's wrong?" I looked up at her, this woman who'd been my rival now seeking my protection. And somewhere across town, my best friend's child might be alone and scared. "We have to go," I said, standing on shaky legs. "Now." As we hurried to my car, I caught a glimpse of a familiar figure in the parking lot. Jackson, his face twisted with rage, spotted us and started running. "Get in!" I yelled to Melissa, fumbling with my keys. We peeled out of the lot just as Jackson reached us, his fists pounding on the window. In the rearview mirror, I saw him sprint to his own car. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. Melissa whimpered beside me, one hand protectively cradling her belly. "Where are we going?" she asked, fear evident in her voice. I took a deep breath, my mind made up. To save a little boy. As we sped through the night, Jackson's headlights looming in the mirror, I realized my life had irrevocably changed. In one night, I'd become protector to my husband's mistress and guardian to my best friend's orphaned child. Whatever came next, I knew nothing would ever be the same. The first few weeks with Ethan were a blur of sleepless nights, tear-stained cheeks, and awkward silences. At 5 years old, he was old enough to understand that his parents weren't coming back, but too young to fully grasp the permanence of death. His grief manifested in tantrums and nightmares that left us both exhausted. One particularly rough morning, I found Ethan huddled in his closet, clutching a photo of Marianne and Tom. "Ethan, sweetheart," I called softly, crouching down to his level. "What are you doing in there?" His big brown eyes, so like Marianne's, met mine. "I want my mommy," he whispered, his lower lip trembling. My heart shattered. "I know, sweetie. I miss her, too." I held out my arms, and after a moment's hesitation, he crawled into them. I held him close, rocking gently as he sobbed against my shoulder. "Why did they leave me?" He hiccuped between tears. I swallowed hard, fighting back my own grief. "They didn't want to, Ethan. They loved you so much. Sometimes bad things happen, and we can't control them. But I promise you, your mommy and daddy would be so proud of how brave you're being." He pulled back, wiping his nose on his sleeve. "Really?" I nodded, managing a small smile. "Really. And you know what? They asked me to take care of you because they knew how much I love you too." Ethan's brow furrowed. "But you're not my real mom." The words stung, but I pushed past the pain. "You're right, I'm not. But I promise to love you and take care of you, just like your mom would want. We're family now, you and me. Is that okay?" He considered this for a long moment, then nodded solemnly. "Okay. Can we have pancakes for breakfast?" I laughed, relief washing over me. "Absolutely. Let's go make a mess in the kitchen." As the weeks turned into months, Ethan and I settled into a routine. School drop-offs, bedtime stories, weekend trips to the park. Slowly but surely, we were building a life together. It wasn't always easy, but every small victory felt monumental. One evening, as I tucked Ethan into bed, he asked the question I'd been dreading. "Nora, why don't you have any kids of your own?" I froze, caught off guard by the innocent inquiry. "Well," I began, choosing my words carefully, "sometimes it's not that easy for grown-ups to have babies. I wanted to very much, but it just didn't happen for me." Ethan's face scrunched up in thought. "Is that why you took me? Because you couldn't have your own baby?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. "No, sweetie," I said firmly, sitting on the edge of his bed. "I took you in because I love you and because your mom was my best friend. You're not a replacement for anything. You're you, and that's exactly who I want you to be." He nodded, seemingly satisfied. Then in a small voice he asked, "Can I call you Mom?" Tears sprang to my eyes. "Oh, Ethan, if that's what you want, I'd be honored." He smiled, reaching up to wipe away a tear that had escaped down my cheek. "Don't cry, Mom. I love you too." As I left his room that night, my heart full to bursting, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from Jackson. "We need to talk. It's about Ethan." My blood ran cold. What could Jackson possibly want with Ethan? He'd never shown any interest in children before, unless... A horrible thought struck me. What if Jackson was Ethan's biological father? What if all those years of trying to conceive, he'd been unfaithful not just with Melissa, but with Marianne too? I sank to the floor, my back against Ethan's door, as the implications washed over me. If it was true, Jackson tried to take Ethan away. The life we'd built, the family we'd become, it could all be ripped away in an instant. I looked at my phone, Jackson's message still glowing on the screen. Whatever he wanted, whatever secrets were about to be revealed, I knew one thing for certain. I would fight with everything I had to keep Ethan safe and by my side. With trembling fingers, I typed out a response. "Tomorrow, noon, the park, and Jackson, if you try anything, I swear I'll make you regret it." I hit send, steeling myself for the battle ahead. For Ethan, I'd face any storm, even if it meant confronting the ghosts of my past and the man who'd shattered my world. The supermarket's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I navigated the crowded aisles. Ethan chattered excitedly beside me. At 8 years old now, he was a bundle of energy and curiosity, always eager to help with the shopping. "Can we get Lucky Charms, Mom? Please?" He tugged at my sleeve, eyes wide and pleading. I laughed, ruffling his hair. "Nice try, buddy. How about we compromise with some Cheerios?" As we turned the corner into the cereal aisle, I froze. There, examining a box of Bran Flakes, was Jackson. My heart raced, and I instinctively pulled Ethan closer. "Mom?" Ethan looked up at me, confusion etched on his face. "What's wrong?" Before I could respond, Jackson turned. His eyes widened in recognition, then narrowed as they settled on Ethan. "Well, well," he drawled, a smirk playing at his lips. "If it isn't my ex-wife and her, what should I call him? Rental kid?" Anger flared in my chest. "Jackson," I hissed, "don't you dare." "What? State the obvious?" He stepped closer, his gaze cruel. "How pathetic, Nora. Couldn't have a baby of your own, so you had to borrow someone else's." Ethan's grip on my hand tightened. "Don't talk to my mom like that," he shouted, his young voice ringing through the aisle. Jackson's eyebrows shot up. "Mom? Oh, that's rich. Tell me, kid, does she tuck you in at night and pretend she's your real mother? Does she—" "Shut up," I snapped, my voice trembling with rage. "You have no right to speak to us like this. Come on, Ethan, we're leaving." As I turned to go, Jackson grabbed my arm. "Not so fast. We have unfinished business, you and I." Ethan reacted instantly, kicking Jackson hard in the shin. "Let go of her." Jackson yelped in pain, releasing me. His face contorted with fury. "You little brat." I stepped between them, my protective instincts in overdrive. "Touch him, and I swear I'll make you regret it." A small crowd had gathered, murmuring and staring. Jackson glanced around, seeming to realize he was making a scene. He straightened, smoothing his shirt. "This isn't over, Nora," he said, his voice low and menacing. "You can't play happy families forever. Sooner or later, the truth always comes out." With that, he stalked away, leaving me shaken and confused. What truth was he talking about? Ethan tugged at my hand. "Mom, can we go home now?" I nodded, abandoning our half-filled cart. As we walked to the car, Ethan's small voice broke the silence. "I'm sorry I kicked that man, Mom, but he was being mean to you." I knelt down, pulling him into a tight hug. "Oh, sweetheart, you have nothing to be sorry for. You were so brave." "Who was he?" Ethan asked, his face buried in my shoulder. I took a deep breath. That was my ex-husband, the man I was married to before." Ethan pulled back, his brow furrowed. "He's not very nice." "No," I agreed. "He's not, but you know what? We don't need him. We have each other, and that's what matters." As we drove home, my mind raced. Jackson's words echoed in my head. What did he mean about the truth coming out? And why now, after all this time? That night, after tucking Ethan in, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone. I knew I should call my lawyer, maybe even the police. Jackson's behavior had been threatening, and I needed to protect Ethan. But something held me back. A nagging feeling that there was more to this story than I knew. What if Jackson really did have information about Ethan? What if he could take him away? My finger hovered over Jackson's number. One call could give me answers, but it could also open a Pandora's box of trouble. Was I ready to face whatever truths might come to light? The clock ticked loudly in the quiet house. Ethan's soft snores drifted from his room. This was our life now, our family. I'd do anything to protect it. With a deep breath, I made my decision. I pressed the call button, my heart pounding as the phone began to ring. Whatever Jackson had to say, whatever storm was coming our way, I'd face it head on. For Ethan, for our family, for the life we'd built together. As the ringing continued, I steeled myself for the battle ahead. No matter what, I wouldn't let anyone tear us apart. Not Jackson, not the past, not even the truth itself. The cafe bustled with mid-morning activity, but I barely noticed the chatter around me. My eyes were fixed on the door, my heart racing as I waited for Jackson to arrive. Ethan was safely at school, unaware of this clandestine meeting that could change everything. The bell above the door chimed, and there he was. Jackson, looking as smug and self-assured as ever. He slid into the seat across from me, a manila envelope in his hand. "Nora," he said, his voice dripping with false warmth. "So good of you to meet me." I cut straight to the chase. "What do you want, Jackson? What's this truth you were talking about?" He smirked, tapping the envelope. Always so impatient, but I suppose there's no point in dragging this out. He slid the envelope across the table. "Open it." With trembling hands I did. Inside were medical records. Jackson's medical records. My eyes widened as I scanned the documents, disbelief washing over me. "You're infertile?" I whispered, looking up at him in shock. Jackson nodded, his smug expression faltering for a moment. "Have been since before we were married. All those years of trying, all those treatments. It was never going to work, Nora. It was always you." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Anger, hurt, and confusion warred within me. "Why?" I choked out. "Why put me through all of that if you knew?" He shrugged, but I could see the guilt in his eyes. I thought maybe the doctors were wrong, and then, when I realized they weren't, I was a coward. It was easier to let you think it was your fault. I felt sick. All those years of self-doubt, of feeling broken and inadequate, all because of his lie. "You bastard," I hissed. "Do you have any idea what you put me through?" "I'm sorry," he said, and for once he sounded sincere. "I know it doesn't make up for anything, but I am sorry." I shook my head, fighting back tears. "Why tell me now, after all this time?" Jackson's expression hardened. "Because of Ethan. I've been doing some digging, Nora. I know he's not really Marianne's son." My blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" He leaned forward, his voice low. "I found adoption papers. Marianne and Tom adopted Ethan as a newborn. And here's the kicker. His birth mother? She looks an awful lot like you." The room spun around me. It couldn't be true. And yet, a long-buried memory surfaced. A drunken night with Tom years ago, before he and Marianne were married. We'd sworn never to speak of it, to pretend it never happened. "No," I whispered, more to myself than to Jackson. "It's not possible, isn't it?" Jackson pressed. "Think about it, Nora. The timing fits. And haven't you ever wondered why you felt such an instant connection to him?" Tears streamed down my face as the implications hit me. If it was true, if Ethan was really my son... "What do you want?" I asked, my voice barely audible. Jackson's expression softened slightly. "I want you to know the truth. About me, about Ethan. And I want a chance to make things right." I stared at him, incredulous. "Make things right? How could you possibly?" "I can help you," he interrupted. "If Ethan is your biological son, you have rights. We could fight for custody together." The offer hung in the air between us, tempting and terrifying all at once. Part of me wanted to scream at Jackson, to throw the envelope in his face and storm out, but another part, the part that had always longed for a child of my own, whispered that maybe, just maybe, this was my chance. "I need time," I said finally, gathering the documents with shaking hands. "I need to process all of this." Jackson nodded, standing up. "Take all the time you need. But Nora, don't wait too long. Ethan deserves to know the truth about where he came from." As he walked away, I sat frozen, the weight of his revelations crushing me. My whole world had just been turned upside down. Ethan, my sweet, brave Ethan, could be my flesh and blood. The child I'd always longed for had been right in front of me all along. But claiming him as my own would mean destroying the life we'd built together. It would mean shattering his memories of Marianne and Tom, the parents he'd loved and lost. Could I do that to him? Could I be that selfish? As I left the cafe, my mind reeling, I knew I faced the most impossible decision of my life. The truth was out there now, waiting to be acknowledged. And whatever choice I made, nothing would ever be the same again. The university campus buzzed with excitement as proud families gathered for graduation day. I stood at the edge of the crowd, my heart swelling with pride as I watched Ethan, now a handsome young man of 22, adjusting his cap and gown. "Mom," he called, waving me over. "Can you believe it? I'm finally done." I hugged him tightly, blinking back tears. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. Your parents would be too." A shadow crossed his face at the mention of Marianne and Tom, but he quickly smiled again. "I know, and I'm grateful for you, Mom, for everything." As we made our way towards the auditorium, a familiar voice stopped us cold. Well, if it isn't the happy family." I turned to see Jackson standing there, looking older but still as smug as ever. Ethan tensed beside me. "What are you doing here?" I hissed, stepping protectively in front of Ethan. Jackson smirked. "Can't a man congratulate his stepson on his big day?" Ethan's eyes widened in confusion. "Stepson? What are you talking about?" My heart raced. I'd never told Ethan the truth about his parentage, always planning to wait for the right moment. But now, Jackson was threatening to ruin everything. "It's nothing, Ethan," I said quickly. "Let's go inside." But Jackson wasn't done. "Oh, come now, Nora, don't you think it's time he knew about his real mother?" Ethan looked between us, his face a mix of confusion and growing anger. "Mom, what's going on?" I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came out. How could I explain years of secrets and lies in this moment? "Your mother here has been keeping quite the secret," Jackson continued, his voice dripping with false concern. "You see, Ethan, Marianne and Tom weren't your real parents. They adopted you, and your birth mother, well, she's standing right next to you." The world seemed to stop. Ethan stumbled back, his face pale with shock. "What? Mom, is this true?" Tears streamed down my face as I nodded. "Ethan, I'm so sorry. I wanted to tell you, but How long have you known?" he demanded, his voice shaking. I only found out recently," I stammered. "I was trying to find the right time to—" "To what?" Ethan interrupted, his voice rising. "To tell me my whole life has been a lie? That the woman I've called Mom for years is actually my birth mother?" Jackson watched our exchange with barely concealed glee. "Oh, it gets better. Tell him about Tom, Nora. Tell him how you—" "Enough!" A commanding voice cut through the tension. We all turned to see Arthur Callahan, CEO of a major tech company and an old friend of Marianne's family, striding towards us. "This is neither the time nor the place for such revelations," Arthur said firmly. He turned to Ethan, his expression softening. "Young man, I knew your parents, all of them, and I can assure you the love they had for you was real, regardless of biology." Ethan's shoulders sagged, the fight seeming to drain out of him. I don't know what to believe anymore." Arthur placed a comforting hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Believe in your own accomplishments. This is your day, Ethan. Don't let anyone take that away from you." He glanced at Jackson. "And as for you, I think it's time you left." Jackson opened his mouth to protest, but something in Arthur's steely gaze made him think better of it. With a final sneer in my direction, he slunk away. As the crowd around us began to disperse, Arthur turned to Ethan. "I have a proposition for you. My company is always looking for bright young minds. How would you like to join us as a junior executive?" Ethan blinked, momentarily distracted from the emotional turmoil. Really? But you don't even know my qualifications." Arthur smiled. "I know enough. What do you say?" As Ethan and Arthur discussed the details, I stood to the side, my mind reeling. In the span of minutes, everything had changed. The truth was out, for better or worse, and I had no idea where we'd go from here. The ceremony was about to begin, and Ethan turned to me, his expression unreadable. "We need to talk," he said quietly. "After all this is over." I nodded, my heart heavy. "Of course, whatever you need." As we made our way into the auditorium, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was a turning point. Our relationship, our family, hung in the balance. And I had no idea if we'd be able to rise from the ashes of these revelations, or if everything we'd built would crumble to dust. The tension in the air was palpable as Ethan and I stood face to face in our living room. His graduation gown lay discarded on the couch, a stark reminder of how quickly joy had turned to anguish. "Why didn't you tell me?" Ethan's voice was raw with emotion. "All these years, you knew you were my real mother?" I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. "No, sweetheart. I only found out recently. I was trying to find the right way to tell you." "And Tom? Was he really my father?" I took a deep breath. "Yes, it was a mistake. One night, before he and Marianne were married. We never spoke of it again." Ethan paced the room, running his hands through his hair. "So my whole life has been a lie? Marianne and Tom weren't even my real parents?" "No," I said fiercely. "They loved you more than anything in this world. Biology doesn't change that." Before Ethan could respond, a loud banging on the door made us both jump. Jackson's voice boomed from the other side. "Open up! We're not done here." Fear gripped my heart. "Ethan, call the police," I whispered. But it was too late. The door burst open, revealing Jackson, his eyes wild with anger and something else, desperation. "You think you can just cut me out?" he snarled, advancing towards us. "I'm the one who uncovered the truth. I deserve to be part of this family." Ethan stepped in front of me protectively. "You're not family. You're nothing but a bitter, jealous man who couldn't handle the truth about himself." Jackson's face contorted with rage. He lunged forward, grabbing Ethan by the shirt. "You ungrateful little—" Suddenly, Arthur appeared in the doorway, his imposing figure filling the frame. "That's enough, Jackson. Let him go." Jackson released Ethan, turning his fury on Arthur. This is all your fault, swooping in like some white knight." "The only person at fault here is you," Arthur said calmly. "Now I suggest you leave before the police arrive." As if on cue, sirens wailed in the distance. Jackson's face paled. He looked from Arthur to Ethan to me, realization dawning that he'd lost everything. "This isn't over," he spat, before pushing past Arthur and disappearing into the night. In the aftermath, as the police took our statements and Jackson was arrested for breaking and entering, Ethan, Arthur, and I sat in stunned silence. Finally, Ethan spoke. "I'm sorry, Mom, for doubting you, for pushing you away." I reached for his hand, my heart swelling with love. "Oh, sweetheart, you have nothing to be sorry for. I'm the one who should apologize. I should have told you the truth sooner." "Maybe," he said, squeezing my hand, "but I understand why you didn't. You were protecting me, just like you always have." Arthur cleared his throat. "If I may, Ethan, I've known your family, all of your family, for a long time, and I can say without a doubt that you are loved. By Marianne and Tom, who chose you and cherished every moment with you, and by Nora, who has been there for you in ways that go beyond biology." Tears welled in my eyes as I looked at Arthur gratefully. In that moment, I saw him not just as Marianne's old friend or Ethan's mentor, but as a man of compassion and strength. Ethan nodded, a small smile playing at his lips. "I know, it's a lot to process, but I'm glad I know the truth now. And I'm glad you're my mom, Nora. Both of you, you and Marianne." As the night wore on, we talked, really talked, about everything. The past, the present, our fears and hopes for the future. And as the first light of dawn crept through the windows, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. Ethan yawned, stretching. "I should get some sleep. Big day tomorrow, starting the new job and all." As he headed to his room, he paused, looking back at Arthur and me. "You know, you two make a pretty good team." With that, he was gone, leaving Arthur and me alone. We looked at each other, a spark of something new and exciting passing between us. "He's right," Arthur said softly. "We do make a good team." I smiled, feeling the weight of the past lifting from my shoulders. "Yes, we do." As Arthur took my hand, I realized that this wasn't just an ending, it was a new beginning. For Ethan, stepping into his future with the truth as his foundation. For me, finding love and companionship when I least expected it. And for all of us, as a family, bound not by blood or obligation, but by choice and love. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, I was excited to see where it would lead. Together, we would face whatever came our way, stronger and more resilient than ever before. The summer sun beat down on us as we loaded our bags into the SUV, ready for our long-awaited family trip. Richard, my husband of 35 years, barked orders like a drill sergeant. "Joanna, make sure you pack the cooler with enough drinks and snacks for the drive, and don't forget the maps and directions." I bit my tongue, resisting the urge to remind him that I'd been planning this trip for months. As usual, he assumed I'd handle all the logistics while he reaped the rewards. Sylvia, Richard's mother, emerged from the house, her face pinched in disapproval. "Are we ready to go yet? You know how I hate waiting." I forced a smile. "Just about. Michael and Rebecca should be here any minute." As if on cue, my son and daughter-in-law pulled into the driveway. Michael gave me a sympathetic look, well aware of the tension between his father and me. We piled into the SUV, and I settled into the passenger seat, ready for the long drive ahead. But as we merged onto the highway, I overheard a hushed conversation from the back. "Once we're settled at the cabin, we'll have that talk with Joanna," Sylvia murmured to Richard. My heart sank. Talk? What were they planning? Richard's voice was low, but I caught the gist. "It's for the best, Mother. She'll never see it coming." "See what coming?" A knot formed in my stomach as I realized they were conspiring against me on what was supposed to be a joyful family vacation. The drive passed in tense silence, punctuated only by Sylvia's occasional snide remarks. By the time we reached the cabin, my nerves were frayed. As we unloaded our bags, Richard pulled me aside. "Joanna, we need to talk." I steeled myself, determined not to show weakness. "About what?" He glanced around, his expression guarded. "Not here. Let's go for a walk." We strolled along a nearby trail, the evening shadows lengthening around us. Finally, Richard spoke. "Mother and I have been discussing our living situation. With her health declining, she needs more care than I can provide on my own." I nodded, unsure where this was leading. "We've decided it would be best if she moved in with us permanently. That way, you can take care of her needs." My jaw dropped. "You expect me to become a full-time caregiver for your mother, without even consulting me?" Richard's eyes hardened. "It's the logical solution. You're retired and I'm still working. Who else is going to do it?" I shook my head in disbelief. "And what about my needs, Richard? Don't those matter at all?" He scoffed. "Don't be so dramatic. This is what families do. We take care of each other." But his words rang hollow. In that moment, I realized our marriage had become a sham, a facade of obligation rather than love or respect. As we returned to the cabin, Sylvia greeted us with a smug smile. She knew exactly what was happening, and she relished her victory. That night, as I lay awake in the unfamiliar bed, my mind raced. How had I let things spiral so far out of control? When had I stopped being Richard's partner and become little more than a servant? I thought of the dreams I'd once had, traveling, pursuing hobbies, enjoying my retirement. All of it had been sacrificed on the altar of duty and obligation. But as the first rays of dawn peeked through the curtains, a newfound determination took root within me. I would no longer be a passive bystander in my own life. It was time to take a stand. The cabin's rustic charm did little to soothe my frayed nerves as we settled in for the night. Richard and Sylvia acted as if nothing was amiss, chatting amiably about the scenic views and plans for hiking the next day. Their nonchalance only fueled my growing sense of unease. After dinner, I excused myself and retreated to the bedroom I was sharing with Richard. Closing the door behind me, I sank onto the edge of the bed, my mind racing. What were they plotting against me, and why? Memories flooded back. The countless times I'd put my own dreams on hold to cater to Richard's needs, the way Sylvia had always treated me like an intruder in her precious son's life. Had I been so blinded by a misguided sense of duty that I'd missed the cracks in our family's foundation? A muffled voice from the living room snapped me out of my reverie. I strained to listen, recognizing Richard's hushed tones. "Can't go on like this, Mother. She's become a burden." My heart pounded in my ears as Sylvia's raspy voice responded. "I told you she was never good enough for my son. We need to take action before it's too late." Take action? A chill ran down my spine. Were they planning to get rid of me somehow? I crept closer to the door, pressing my ear against the wood. Their voices grew clearer, the words like knives twisting in my gut. "We'll have to be discreet," Richard murmured. "Michael can never find out the truth." My son's name sent a jolt through me. They were going to lie to him, to turn him against me. Tears stung my eyes as I realized the depth of their betrayal. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen in shock and disbelief. When Richard finally entered the bedroom, his expression was carefully neutral. "You should get some rest," he said, avoiding my gaze. "Big day tomorrow." I watched him disappear into the bathroom, my mind whirling. I couldn't confront him, not yet. Not until I had a plan. That night, as Richard's soft snores filled the room, I lay awake, plotting my next move. I would not go down without a fight. These people who claimed to be my family had shown their true colors, and it was time I did the same. As the first rays of dawn peeked through the curtains, I felt a newfound sense of determination. No more playing the dutiful wife and mother. From now on, I would be the master of my own destiny. Over breakfast, I studied Richard and Sylvia, watching for any hint of their sinister intentions. But they maintained their facade of normalcy, discussing the day's activities as if nothing were amiss. "I thought we could go for a hike this morning," Richard suggested, his tone deceptively casual. "Get some fresh air before the heat sets in." I forced a smile, playing along for now. "Sounds lovely." As we set off into the woods, I hung back, allowing Richard and Sylvia to take the lead. Michael and Rebecca trailed behind, their hushed conversation a comforting backdrop. Sylvia's voice carried back to me, sharp and condescending. "Honestly, Richard, I don't know how you put up with her. She's dead weight, dragging you down." My fists clenched at her cruel words, but I remained silent, biding my time. Richard's response was muffled, but I caught the gist. "Don't worry, Mother. Soon she'll be out of our lives for good." A wave of anger washed over me, hot and consuming. How dare they? After everything I'd sacrificed, this was how they repaid me. In that moment, a plan began to take shape in my mind. A plan for revenge, for justice. They thought they could cast me aside like an unwanted burden? Well, they had another thing coming. As we reached a scenic overlook, I hung back, allowing the others to admire the view. While their backs were turned, I slipped away, retracing our steps back toward the cabin. It was time to take control of my life, once and for all. I watched Richard and Sylvia disappear down the hiking trail, their voices fading into the distance. As soon as they were out of sight, I sprang into action, hurrying back to the cabin. My heart pounded as I slipped inside, scanning the living area for any sign of their belongings. A leather briefcase sat on the coffee table, and I recognized it as Richard's. Without hesitation, I unzipped it, rifling through the contents. Financial statements, legal documents, and letters. My breath caught in my throat as I unfolded one, the looping handwriting unmistakably feminine. The words leapt off the page, searing into my brain. "My dearest Richard, our stolen moments together are all that sustain me." I stumbled back, the room spinning around me. An affair? After all these years of loyalty and sacrifice, he'd been unfaithful? Bile rose in my throat as I continued reading, the sordid details laying bare the depth of his betrayal. And there were more letters, each one more damning than the last. Tears blurred my vision as I turned to the financial records, my hands trembling. Line after line of unexplained expenditures and hidden accounts, proof that Richard had been bleeding our savings dry right under my nose. The sound of laughter drifted in from outside, and I froze, panic gripping me. Michael and Rebecca must have returned from the hike. I had to act fast. Snatching up the incriminating evidence, I raced to the bedroom and began stuffing my belongings into a suitcase. My mind raced, formulating a plan. I couldn't confront Richard and Sylvia here, not with Michael caught in the crossfire. No, I needed to get away, to gather my strength and decide my next move. As I zipped up the suitcase, a familiar voice called out from the living room. "Mom, are you in here?" "Michael?" My heart clenched at the concern in his tone. He deserved to know the truth, but not yet. Not until I was ready to face the fallout. "I'm just resting, honey," I called back, willing my voice to remain steady. "I'll be out in a bit." Silence, then the murmur of Rebecca's soothing tones as she ushered him away. Bless that girl for her intuition. With shaking hands, I scribbled a hasty note, tucking it into Richard's briefcase, along with the damning evidence. Then, gripping my suitcase tightly, I slipped out the back door and into the waiting rental car. As I peeled out of the driveway, I caught a glimpse of Michael and Rebecca on the porch, their expressions puzzled. A pang of guilt twisted in my gut, but I pushed it aside. They would understand in time. For now, I had a mission: to gather the strength and resources I'd need to bring my husband and his vile mother to their knees. They thought they could discard me like a worn-out rag? Well, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. The miles stretched out before me, and with each one I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. No more playing the dutiful wife, the obedient daughter-in-law. From this moment on, I would be the master of my own destiny. And Richard and Sylvia? They were going to pay for every single slight, every betrayal, every ounce of disrespect they'd heaped upon me over the years. I would see to that, no matter what it took. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I allowed a grim smile to crease my lips. The game was on, and they had no idea what was coming for them. I drove in a daze, the miles blurring together as I put distance between myself and that wretched cabin. My hands shook on the steering wheel, a potent mix of anger and adrenaline coursing through my veins. How could he? How could Richard betray me like this after everything we'd been through? The letters burned in my mind, their sordid details searing into my brain like acid. And Sylvia, that vile woman, had been in on it the whole time, no doubt reveling in my humiliation. Well, they were going to regret the day they ever crossed me. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, I pulled into a nondescript motel, my body thrumming with nervous energy. I needed to regroup, to formulate a plan for my next move. The dingy room did little to calm my frayed nerves, but I forced myself to take deep breaths, willing my racing heart to slow. Sinking onto the sagging mattress, I reached for my phone with trembling fingers. Richard's number glared back at me from the screen, and a bitter laugh escaped my lips. Oh, how the tables had turned. No more would I be the obedient little wife scurrying to answer his every beck and call. This time, he would be the one squirming, forced to face the consequences of his actions. The phone rang, and rang, and rang. Just as I was about to hang up, his gruff voice crackled over the line. "Joanna, where the hell are you? Your son is worried sick." I bristled at his tone, that familiar mix of condescension and entitlement. Not anymore. "Save it, Richard," I spat. "I know everything. About the affairs, the money you've been siphoning off. I have proof." Silence, thick and heavy, stretched between us. Then a low chuckle that sent ice shooting through my veins. "So what?" he sneered. "You really think anyone will believe the ramblings of a bitter, delusional old woman?" White-hot rage licked at my insides, but I forced myself to remain calm, to keep my voice level. "I'm not the one who's delusional, Richard. You and your mother have been playing me for a fool for far too long. Well, those days are over." Another pause, and when he spoke again, his words were laced with venom. "You ungrateful bitch, after everything I've done for you, for this family? You're going to regret this." A harsh laugh burst from my lips. "No, Richard, you're the one who's going to regret it. Every single lie, every betrayal, every ounce of disrespect you've heaped upon me. You're going to pay for it all. I promise you that." His response was a torrent of profanity and vitriol, but I barely heard it. A sense of grim determination had settled over me, hardening my resolve. "Don't bother coming after me," I warned, cutting off his tirade. "And if you know what's good for you, you'll keep your distance from our son. This is just the beginning, Richard. The gloves are off now." With that, I ended the call, a strange sense of calm washing over me. For the first time in decades, I felt in control of my own destiny. Grabbing a pen and paper, I began to make a list: names, numbers, resources. I would need allies in the battle to come, people I could trust to have my back. Jane, my oldest and dearest friend, would be the first. She'd been urging me to leave Richard for years, and I knew she would be in my corner without question. Next, a lawyer, a shark in the courtroom who could help me navigate the legal quagmire that was sure to come. I had evidence of Richard's misdeeds, but I would need an expert to ensure it stuck. As the list grew, I felt a newfound sense of purpose taking root within me. No more would I be the downtrodden, disrespected wife. Richard and Sylvia had awoken a sleeping giant, and they were about to feel the full force of my wrath. A grim smile tugged at my lips as I made the final entry on the list. Michael. My son. My rock. The one person in that twisted family who had always had my back. It was time to bring him into the fold, to let him know that the games were over. Together, we would take down the Machiavellian forces that had been working to destroy us. And when the dust settled, well, let's just say Richard and Sylvia would be the ones regretting the day they ever crossed Joanna Henderson. I pulled up to Michael and Rebecca's cozy bungalow, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it, the moment of truth. Would my son understand the agonizing decision I'd made, or would he side with his father, blinded by years of manipulation? Taking a deep breath, I gathered my things and made my way to the front door, my knuckles rapping against the weathered wood. Seconds ticked by like hours before Rebecca's smiling face appeared. "Joanna, we were so worried when you took off like that. Come in, come in." Her cheerful demeanor faltered as she took in my haggard appearance, the suitcase clutched in my white-knuckled grip. "Is everything okay?" I opened my mouth to respond, but the words stuck in my throat. Michael's concerned voice drifted in from the living room. "Mom, is that you?" He rounded the corner, and I saw the moment the truth dawned on him. The suitcase, my red-rimmed eyes, the grim set of my jaw. His expression shifted from confusion to dread. "What's going on? Where's Dad?" Rebecca laid a gentle hand on his arm, her gaze flicking between us. "Why don't we all sit down?" We settled onto the plush sofa, an oppressive silence hanging in the air. Michael's eyes bored into me, pleading for an explanation. Drawing a shaky breath, I began to speak, the words tumbling out in a torrent. "Your father, he's been unfaithful, Michael. For years, by the looks of it. And not just that, he's been bleeding our finances dry, funneling money into secret accounts." Michael's brow furrowed as he processed my words. "What? That can't be right. Dad would never." His voice trailed off as I pulled out the crumpled letters, the bank statements detailing the missing funds. Wordlessly, I handed them over, watching as his eyes scanned the damning evidence. "Oh, Mom." His shoulders slumped, and I saw the exact moment the truth hit him, like a physical blow. "I'm so sorry." Tears pricked my eyes, but I blinked them away, straightening my spine. "That's not all, honey. Your grandmother was in on it. They were planning to force me out, to make me your father's full-time caregiver while he carried on with God knows who." Rebecca's sharp intake of breath was the only sound in the room as Michael digested this latest bombshell. His expression darkened, and I recognized the flicker of anger in his eyes. Anger on my behalf. "Those bastards," he muttered, his fists clenching. "How could they do this to you, to our family?" I reached out, covering his hand with mine. "It doesn't matter now. What's done is done. I've made my decision. I'm leaving your father. I can't live like that anymore, constantly disrespected and manipulated." A muscle ticked in Michael's jaw as he processed my words. I could see the war raging within him, the desire to support me, battling against years of ingrained loyalty to his father. Finally, he met my gaze, his eyes shining with a fierce determination that made my heart swell with pride. "You're right, Mom. This ends now. Dad and Grandma," he shook his head, jaw clenched. "They've gone too far this time. I'm with you, 100%. Whatever you need, I'm here." A weight lifted from my shoulders as Rebecca nodded her agreement, squeezing Michael's hand. In that moment, I knew everything would be okay. With my son and his wife in my corner, I could weather any storm Richard and Sylvia threw my way. Reaching out, I pulled Michael into a fierce embrace, blinking back grateful tears. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for believing me, for having my back." As I held my son close, I felt a newfound sense of strength coursing through me. The path ahead would be rocky, but I was no longer alone. With Michael and Rebecca by my side, I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Richard and Sylvia had made a grave miscalculation. They had underestimated the bond between a mother and her child, and now they would pay the price for their betrayal. The war had begun, and I had no intention of losing. With Michael and Rebecca's unwavering support, I felt a newfound sense of strength and determination. It was time to reclaim my life, to shed the shackles of Richard and Sylvia's manipulation once and for all. The first order of business was finding a place of my own, a sanctuary where I could begin to heal and plan my next steps. Michael insisted on helping me search, and within a week, we'd found the perfect little apartment in a quiet neighborhood. As I unpacked my belongings, filling the bare shelves and walls with pieces of my life, a weight seemed to lift from my shoulders. This was my space, my refuge from the toxicity that had plagued me for far too long. Of course, Richard didn't take my departure lying down. He showed up at Michael's doorstep, red-faced and bellowing, demanding to know where I was. "She's your mother, for God's sake," he raged at Michael. "You're supposed to be loyal to your family, not that ungrateful harpy." But Michael stood firm, his jaw set in that stubborn line I knew so well. "Mom's the only family I need right now. You and Grandma have done enough damage." Richard's eyes narrowed, and I could see the gears turning in his mind, searching for a way to regain control. "Don't be so quick to judge, son. You haven't heard the full story." "I've heard enough," Michael shot back. "Mom showed me the letters, the bank statements. I know exactly what kind of man you are." For a moment, Richard faltered, his bravado slipping. Then his expression hardened, and he jabbed a finger in Michael's face. "Mark my words, you're going to regret this. When your mother's lies come crashing down around her, don't come crawling back to me." With that, he turned on his heel and stormed off, leaving a ringing silence in his wake. Michael's shoulders slumped, and I could see the toll this was taking on him. Crossing the room, I pulled him into a fierce hug. "Thank you," I murmured. "Thank you for standing by me." He returned the embrace, his voice thick with emotion. "Always, Mom. I'm with you till the end." In the weeks that followed, I focused on settling into my new life, unpacking, decorating, exploring my neighborhood. With each passing day, I felt a little more like myself, the weight of Richard and Sylvia's toxicity slowly lifting from my shoulders. Of course, they didn't make it easy. Richard bombarded me with calls and texts, alternating between pleading for me to come home and hurling vicious insults. Sylvia was no better, leaving scathing voicemails that made my blood boil. But I stood firm, bolstered by Michael and Rebecca's constant support. I knew that if I wavered, even for a moment, Richard would seize the opportunity to reel me back in, and I refused to let that happen. Not after everything I'd been through. The final straw came a few months later when Michael called me in a panic. "Mom, you need to get over here. Dad's gone off the deep end." I raced over to find Richard ranting and raving on Michael's doorstep, his face contorted with rage. "You're making a huge mistake, siding with that lying witch," he spat as I approached. "She's poisoned you against your own family." Sylvia hovered nearby, wringing her hands and shooting me venomous glares. For once, I felt no fear, only a simmering anger at the way they continued to try and manipulate us. Planting myself in front of Richard, I met his glare head-on. "That's enough. You've had your chance to tell your side of the story, and Michael hasn't bought your lies. It's over, Richard. We're done." His face purpled with rage, and for a moment I thought he might strike me. But Michael stepped forward, his broad frame imposing. "You heard her, Dad. It's time for you to leave, and if you can't respect our decisions, you're no longer welcome here." The fight seemed to go out of Richard all at once. His shoulders slumped, and he shot me one last withering glare. "Have it your way, but don't come crying to me when this all blows up in your face." As he and Sylvia retreated, I felt an immense sense of relief wash over me. That chapter of my life was finally closed, the shackles of their manipulation broken for good. Turning to Michael, I pulled him into a fierce hug, blinking back grateful tears. "Thank you," I whispered, "for everything." He held me close, his voice thick with emotion. "You've got nothing to thank me for, Mom. You're the strongest person I know." And in that moment, I knew it was true. Richard and Sylvia had done their damnedest to break me, but I had emerged from the ashes, stronger and more resilient than ever before. At long last, I was free. With Richard and Sylvia finally out of our lives, Michael, Rebecca, and I were able to find some semblance of peace. But I knew it wouldn't last, not with the way they had been carrying on. Sooner or later, they would try to reassert their twisted control over the family. My chance for closure came a few months later, when Emma's 85th birthday rolled around. Despite the strained relations, Sylvia still expected the entire clan to gather and celebrate. I could only imagine the venom she would spew if Michael and I failed to show. Part of me wanted to take the high road, to let the past be the past. But a larger part, the part that had endured decades of disrespect and manipulation, craved justice. This would be my opportunity to expose Richard and Sylvia's misdeeds before the entire family. So with Michael and Rebecca's support, I agreed to attend the party. As we made our way to Sylvia's sprawling estate, I could feel the tension crackling in the air, thick as soup. Emma greeted us at the door, her perpetual sneer firmly in place. "Well, well, if it isn't the prodigal daughter-in-law," she sneered. "I must say, you've got a nerve showing your face here after the way you've treated my sister." I opened my mouth to respond, but Michael beat me to it, his voice low and dangerous. "That's enough, Aunt Emma. We're here to celebrate your birthday, not listen to your venom." Her eyes widened at his tone, but she stepped aside, allowing us to pass. The gathering was already in full swing, with clusters of well-heeled guests milling about, sipping cocktails and making polite small talk. Sylvia spotted us immediately, her face contorting into a rictus of rage. She started toward us, no doubt intending to unleash a torrent of abuse, but Richard caught her arm, whispering urgently in her ear. For a moment, I thought they might cause a scene right then and there. But Sylvia seemed to rein in her temper, shooting me a look of pure venom before plastering on a sickly sweet smile. "Joanna, darling, how lovely of you to join us," she simpered, her voice dripping with false sincerity. "And Michael, Rebecca, we're just delighted to have you here." The undercurrent of menace was palpable, but I refused to be cowed. Lifting my chin, I met her gaze head-on. "Thank you for the invitation, Sylvia. It's been too long since we've all gotten together as a family." Her eyes narrowed at my pointed emphasis on the word family, but she said nothing. Richard, however, couldn't resist taking a jab. "Yes, well, some of us have a rather skewed definition of what family means, don't we, dear?" The barb was clearly aimed at me, but I refused to rise to the bait. Instead, I excused myself, making my way toward the bar. If I was going to drop this bombshell, I needed a drink first. As the evening wore on, I bided my time, watching as Richard and Sylvia worked the room, schmoozing and preening like the arrogant snobs they were. Emma, too, held court from her throne-like chair, lording over the proceedings with her usual disdain. Finally, as the cake was being served, I saw my opportunity. Rising from my seat, I clinked my glass, calling for attention. "If I could have everyone's attention, please." The room fell silent, all eyes turning toward me. Richard and Sylvia's expressions were guarded, but I could see the unease flickering in their eyes. Drawing a deep breath, I began to speak, my voice ringing out loud and clear. "I want to thank Emma for including me in this wonderful celebration. It's been far too long since we've all been together as a family." I paused, letting the weight of that word sink in. Sylvia's eyes narrowed, but I pressed on. "Of course, I use that term loosely, because while we may be bound by blood and marriage, the sad truth is that this family has been rotting from the inside for years." A shocked murmur rippled through the crowd, and I saw Richard tense, his face flushing an angry crimson. But I was on a roll now, the words pouring forth in an unstoppable torrent. "You see, for decades I've endured the cruelty and manipulation of my dear husband and mother-in-law, the emotional abuse, the financial betrayals, the utter lack of respect for me as a human being." Gasps and scandalized whispers filled the air as I laid it all bare. The affairs, the hidden bank accounts, their plans to force me into indentured servitude as Richard's caregiver. By the time I finished, Sylvia's face was ashen, her carefully cultivated facade crumbling around her. Richard, too, looked shell-shocked, as if he couldn't quite believe I'd had the audacity to expose his sins before his entire social circle. For a long, charged moment, the room was utterly silent. Then, like a dam bursting, the outrage and condemnation came pouring forth. "How could you, Richard? Sylvia, you wretched woman! And to think we welcomed you into our homes!" The voices swirled around us, a cacophony of judgment and disdain. Sylvia shrank back, her eyes darting wildly, searching for an ally, a friendly face. But there were none. Even Emma had turned her back, her lips pursed in a thin, disapproving line. As the tumult raged on, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. The shackles of shame and secrecy had finally been cast off, the truth laid bare for all to see. Crossing the room, I came to stand before Richard and Sylvia, looking them square in the eye. "It's over," I said, my voice low but unwavering. "Your lies, your manipulations, they've all been exposed. You have no power over me or this family any longer." Sylvia opened her mouth, no doubt to hurl some scathing insult or empty threat. But the words seemed to die in her throat as she took in the scene around her, the accusatory glares, the whispers of disdain. In that moment, I saw the fight go out of her, that indomitable spirit finally broken. She was a fallen queen, her reign of terror at an end. Turning on my heel, I strode from the room, head held high, Michael and Rebecca at my side. As we emerged into the cool evening air, I felt an immense weight lift from my shoulders. At long last, I was free of their toxic influence, their twisted games. And while the road ahead would be long, I knew that I would walk it with strength and dignity, unbowed and unbroken. Revenge, as they say, is a dish best served cold, and oh, how sweet it tasted. In the aftermath of Emma's disastrous birthday party, a strange sense of calm settled over me. For the first time in decades, I was free from the constant weight of Richard and Sylvia's manipulation. Their toxic influence finally purged from my life. Of course, they didn't go quietly into that good night. Richard bombarded me with calls and emails, alternating between groveling pleas for forgiveness and vitriolic tirades against my supposed betrayal. Sylvia, too, made her fair share of attempts to reassert her control, leaving scathing voicemails that I promptly deleted without listening. But I was done engaging with their drama, their twisted mind games. I had laid bare the truth for all to see, and in doing so, I had regained my power, my sense of self-worth. With Michael and Rebecca's support, I focused on building a new life for myself, one free from the shackles of my past. I found a quaint little apartment in a charming neighborhood, filling it with pieces that brought me joy. Fresh flowers, cozy throws, framed photos of happier times. And as the weeks turned to months, I began to venture out, to rediscover the world beyond the confines of my toxic marriage. I joined a book club at the local library, losing myself in the stories of other resilient women who had faced and overcome their own struggles. I volunteered at a nearby soup kitchen, finding solace in the simple act of serving others. Slowly but surely, I began to heal, to reclaim the parts of myself that had been buried for far too long. The anger and bitterness that had once consumed me gave way to a newfound sense of peace, of contentment. Of course, Michael and Rebecca were a constant source of strength and support throughout this journey. They insisted on regular family dinners, filling my little apartment with the sounds of laughter and love. And when Rebecca gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, I was there every step of the way, reveling in the joy of becoming a grandmother. As I cradled that tiny bundle in my arms, gazing into her innocent eyes, I made a silent vow. This child would never know the pain and manipulation that had plagued my own family. She would grow up surrounded by love and respect, her spirit nurtured and cherished. In those quiet moments, rocking my granddaughter to sleep, I found a sense of peace and purpose that had eluded me for far too long. This was what truly mattered, not the petty squabbles or toxic power plays, but the simple joys of family, of unconditional love. And if Richard and Sylvia ever dared to darken our doorstep again, to try and taint this newfound happiness with their venom, well, they would quickly learn that I was no longer the meek, downtrodden woman they had once taken such delight in tormenting. No, I was a phoenix risen from the ashes of my past, stronger and more resilient than ever before. And I would protect this fragile new life with every fiber of my being, come what may. As the years passed, Richard and Sylvia's attempts at contact grew fewer and farther between. Whether they had finally accepted defeat or simply moved on to tormenting some other poor soul, I neither knew nor cared. They were ghosts of my past, shadows that held no power over me any longer. My focus remained firmly on the present, on cherishing each precious moment with my son, my daughter-in-law, and my beautiful granddaughter. We became a tight-knit clan, bound not by blood or obligation, but by a deep, abiding love and respect. And in those quiet moments, as I watched my family blossom and thrive, I knew that I had won the ultimate victory. Not through rage or vengeance, but through the simple act of living my life on my own terms, unbowed and unbroken. Richard and Sylvia had tried their damnedest to crush my spirit, to strip me of my dignity and self-worth. But in the end, it was their hatred, their pettiness, that had withered and died like a noxious weed starved of sunlight. As for me, I had risen from the ashes, a towering lily in full bloom, my fragrance carrying on the wind as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. And that, I knew, was the greatest revenge of all.